have to say, I'm always so moved from that chat list when everybody pours these names and hope and strength to those that are in the midst of challenges in their lives, whether it's here in Zoom or just saying them out loud to ourselves, or even on our Facebook Live, there's names that are being shared. If only we can learn to do for so many more could join us in such acts of grace and acts of compassion and care, of sending strength and helping people to receive that strength. I think that's what sacred communities are really supposed to be doing. And yet, too often we see examples of just the hurt, of the challenge and of the boundaries. I do want to share with you a message for tonight that comes right out of our Torah's teaching. You see the Torah portions, Kitavo, and this is kind of an amazing moment in our text, because we are right there at the border of the promised land, just need to really cross the sea. And we are hearing from Moses and of course from God what it means to live freely. What are the responsibilities to live free and to build a new kind of society that's going to be based on compassion and hope and strength and love. And one of the things that happens, not immediately in the Torah portion, but just the second chapter into the reading, it says that you're going to inscribe upon stones, unhewn stones, stones that have not been cut or touched by iron or bronze, that you're going to inscribe on these stones all the words of this teaching, HaTorah Zot, very clearly. And then they're going to take these massive stones, plaster on them, and whether they're going to write with some sort of ink or carve it into the plaster, they are going to have monuments, two massive stones, like we learned in grade school, like Hammurabi's Code, these massive ancient steels with all of the readings of the Torah, the teachings of the Torah. Now, what they meant at this time, even though they said Torah, it wasn't the entire Torah. It was to be either the book of Deuteronomy or the main laws, the legal principles from the book of Deuteronomy. That's what they're talking about in this particular context, even though the word is just Torah, but Torah means instruction. So on these unhewn, literally whole, W-H-O-L-E, whole stones, the words of the teaching, the laws of this book of Deuteronomy with plaster, so it would last for years and years and years. So imagine it. They completed their journey. They got into the land. The leaders had to put up these messages into these stones so they wouldn't be forgotten, so the teachings wouldn't go dark. They were passed forward to another generation. And these teachings, laws, if you prefer, were going to be lived out together, the young and the not so young, together, sharing in a mission of Israel and building a new kind of society together. That's what we've been trying to talk about in the midst of pandemic and building opportunities through Zoom together. We're creating opportunities for our holy days. Some of them is going to be on Zoom and some will be on podcasts so that you can do on your own, but it's still going to be with an effort to be together. We receive these words from previous generations, these melodies that we've been singing from previous generations. And the text still means something to us. The very beginning of the Torah portion is the same text that we recall not just for the Torah portion, but on certain holy days, including Passover, where it says, my father is a fugitive Aramean, and we're going to bring these first fruits. We've been refugees, fugitives, all of these years, and now we have a land. Before we get to partake, before we eat anything, we're going to show our gratitude for being free, for having food and sustenance. We can't partake without acknowledgement of gratitude. So for them, they knew firsthand what it was like to go through a journey of a wilderness and get to the other side, into a promised land. This is their moment. And they wanted these two stones with plaster and text to tell everybody together, not just what was in the Torah, but how they were going to live out their Jewish values. What would you put on it? You can post it in the chat. I'm actually encouraging you to do that. What would you put on if we created two massive stones that were not cut with iron that could be used for weapons? If we had these massive stones and put plaster on them, what would the Torah that you would say? What would you put on them? What would you post? What do you want our Jewish community to know and to live out? What is it that you think we need to have affirmed? Is it to feed the hungry? Is it to love the stranger? Is it to not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor? Is it to love Adonai, your God, with a whole heart, with all your heart, soul, and might? Is it to sing louder during services, even if you're muted? Is it to care for one another? What is it that we need to see again because we've been apart for a while now? We feel in so many ways disconnected, and it's getting frustrating, I know. But these stones for our ancestors, it wasn't just a symbol of knowing where they came from and the hope that people would remember. These were the essential truths that would drive this new nation into being the nation that would be a light to all other nations. It was to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. So I have seen in this chat some amazing things about being created in God's image and treat others the way you want to be treated. Love yourself so you can love God and love others. That we should be good people, that we should love thy neighbor over and over and over again. Seek truth. Friends, let's take these messages that you hold so dear and let's post them. Let us make these our markers to live by, not just to share in social media and not just to put in the chat, but to actually live by. What's going to be the banner that we're going to post on our homes, on our congregation, for all to see? I wish we had those massive markers of plaster and ancient words where we can be reminded, because I think when it's just in Torah and the Torah is away in the ark, or it's in a book, Or maybe we're reminded when we come together like this for a service or a class or Torah study. If it's not going to be front and center, we lose our focus. So I'm so grateful that all of you posted, really, these essential truths. And I'm inspired, not just because you listened to me and you actually did the task, but because you found real truths to share. And like I've told you a lot recently, during difficult days, for me, for my friends, whatever the sermon is that I preach is the one that I really need to hear. So I'm grateful that you've participated, but really I'm grateful for the hope and the vision and the commitments that you're sharing in this chat about kindness and compassion and love, hospitality and grace and goodness, God and ourselves. And so, yeah, let's continue to be gentle. Let's start with ourselves and then bring it out little by little to others. And then, yes, to the whole entire world. You have that power. I believe it with all my heart. So let's get to work and build these markers, amazing stones that have never been cut with a weapon, and let them guide us.